sixth call launched under the SI initiative, and it's implementing the Disability Employment Package, innovative approaches to improve labor market outcomes for persons with disability. Today, my team will present you more practical information about this call. If you're interested in more general information like activities, deliverables, aim of the call, background of the call, we advise you to go to our subpage of the call, which you can find on the web page, socialinnovationplus.eu, and there you can find the recording of the first info session. So coming back to this info session, this session is designed to provide you with valuable tools and insights to help you to prepare and submit strong and successful proposals. And as we have only 1.5 hours today together, so I'd like to pass the floor to my team who will guide you through certain topics as lump sum introduction, which mistakes to avoid, and some practical tips to follow, and also we'll present our answers to the frequently asked questions. Gediminai.
So hello everyone, I'm Gediminas Rutkauskas, Project Manager at the European Competence Center for Social Innovation, and I will be presenting some, I hope, useful information about the lump sum funding model. I will be presenting the main elements of this model and the overview of the process, while my colleagues later will provide more practical information with examples. I would also like to say that I'm very delighted to see so many of participants attending our session today, and I hope that you will find the session informative and useful. So before we begin analyzing the main aspects of this financing model, first we need to answer the question, what is lump sum funding? Lump sum funding is a financial model in which a project receives a fixed amount based on the budget proposal. Payments are made upon completing predefined activities and deliverables, rewarding results rather than expenses. So instead of tracking every euro spent, you receive payments when project activities are completed and deliverables achieved. It simplifies the funding process by focusing on results achieved rather than paperwork. This funding model has three key elements. First, fixed budget, meaning total funding is set before the project starts. Second, results-based payments, meaning that funding is released after specific activities and deliverables are achieved. And finally, simplified reporting, meaning that only evidence of completed activities and achieved deliverables need to be provided. There are several advantages to using this funding model. For example, less administrative burden. While traditional funding models require extensive financial tracking, with lump sums, organizations can avoid lengthy cost justifications. Focus on results, not costs. Instead of worrying about detailed expenditure reports, project coordinators can concentrate on delivering high-quality outcomes, minimizing financial risks. Since the funding amount is agreed upon beforehand, the risk of financial errors, audits, and funding cuts due to eligibility issues is significantly reduced. And encouraging efficiency, with no need to justify every expense, organizations have more freedom to allocate resources efficiently and innovate in project execution. However, while this funding model has a lot of advantages, like administrative simplicity, lower audit risk, and encouraging clear project design, we have to face the harsh reality that perfect things do not exist. Therefore, there are some disadvantages to this model. One of these is heavy front-loaded planning, which requires detailed cost estimates and justification at the proposal stage. The second one is connected with budget allocation for partners, as incomplete activities by any partner can jeopardize payment for the other partners involved in that work package. So choose your partners and activities you assign to them wisely. And payment risks, as funding depends on the completion of work packages, any delays or underperformance may result in reduced or postponed payments. Now let's move on to the question, how is the lump sum established? So the applicant is responsible for proposing the project budget. The granting authority reviews the proposal and its quality, and based on this assessment, determines the final lump sum, which is confirmed in the grant agreement. This is determined through a two-step process: budget estimation and proposal, followed by budget assessment. Let's start with budget estimation and proposal. When the applicant presents the proposal, it must include cost estimates for each cost category, broken down by work package and by beneficiary. These estimates must reflect the approximate actual cost and be reasonable, proportionate, and essential for the proposed activities. The granting authority uses these estimates to determine the lump sum for each work package and beneficiary. Individual tasks, percentages of progress, or simple time periods do not qualify as work packages. So while long-duration work packages may be divided to ensure a fair share for beneficiaries, this must not be done artificially and must be consistent with the project work plan. These proposals are then assessed by the experts on the basis of relevance, quality, and impact criteria. The quality assessment includes verifying whether the resources and lump sum allocations are sufficient for the proposed activities. Experts may also suggest adjustments if costs appear to be overestimated. The adjusted and confirmed lump sums are then fixed in the grant agreement. And now, I believe, is the most important and interesting question. How is the lump sum paid? So for this call, the payment of lump sum will be made in 3 phases. First phase is the first pre-financing, also known as advance payment. So a portion of lump sum is transferred once the grant agreement has been signed. This advance payment allows project teams to start their activities immediately. Second phase is the second pre-financing. After 12 months, beneficiaries must declare the completed work packages and activities and deliverables achieved to date in the first periodic report. The second pre-financing is paid after this report is validated by the granting authority. My colleagues later will provide more information on how the second pre-financing is calculated. Third phase is final payment. The remaining portion of the lump sum is paid after the project has been fully completed. All deliverables must be accepted and validated by the granting authority in the final periodic report before this payment is made. The key principle here is that lump sum payments are only released upon completion of activities and are strictly tied to the successful achievement of deliverables. Lump sums focus on results rather than actual costs. Now let's have a quick overview of the lump sum funding process. The first step is lump sum proposal, where applicants submit the applications together with the budgets. A detailed breakdown of costs is required to justify the lump sum. The second step is lump sum evaluation, when the proposal is being evaluated and any overestimated costs may be removed. The final lump sum is then fixed in the grant agreement. After the first financing is paid, it is time to start managing the received funding. Here is significant flexibility in how the lump sum can be used. You do not need to report actual costs and resources. As for the acceptance of work packages, at the end of a reporting period, completed work packages need to be declared. If a work package is incomplete, the lump sum share will be paid in part and the funding will be reduced. Considering checks, reviews, and audits, there is no financial reporting, financial checks, or audits. Control focuses on the proper implementation of the work plan and on any non-financial obligations. And finally, there are some tips and tricks for success. First, prepare your work plan carefully. As payments are tied to the completion of work packages, you can break down broad work packages to secure the second pre-financing payment. However, this should be done by taking into account the nature of the activities included in the relevant work packages, as some might be difficult to split. Provide detailed information about activities and deliverables. The description of activities and deliverables should include both qualitative and quantitative data and be sufficiently detailed. This level of precision ensures that both costs and the project implementation plan are well defined and justified. Present the budget information correctly and in detail. Read the budget instructions and cost eligibility information carefully. Keep in mind that all budget expenditures must be substantiated, explained, and connected to specific activities. Collect documents proving the proper implementation of activities. Although there is no financial reporting, the proper implementation of activities will still be checked. The beneficiary must keep all the records required by national law and international procedures. Use the budget flexibly. Lump sum grants offer high budget flexibility as the consortium can utilize the budget as they see fit, provided that the project is implemented as agreed. The actual use of lump sum is invisible to the granting authority. However, budget transfers between beneficiaries and/or between work packages require an amendment if the consortium wishes to incorporate these changes into the grant agreement. Thank you for your time and best of luck with the preparation of your applications. And now I pass the floor to my wonderful colleague Beata, who will provide you information on how to prepare the successful application.
Okay, gonna take over the control. So good morning, everyone. My name is Beata, and today, together with my colleague Aurelia, we will talk about the mistakes which were frequently noticed at the application stage, and the mistakes which we want you to avoid. Moreover, we are planning to share some practical tips, and we will give you some examples what we as the granting authority consider to be a good or bad practice, and we sincerely hope that this information will help you to maximize your application success. There is one thing I would like to say from the very beginning of our presentation. Please do not get upset if at a certain point you fail to follow us, because we're going to present quite a lot of information and there will be a lot to digest indeed. But after the event, we will circulate the slides, so you will have the possibility to go over the material and study relevant information at your own pace. So we are planning to take about half an hour, and we have structured our presentation in 2 blocks. So first of all, I will talk about things related to completing the application form and its annexes. And then my colleague Aurelia will take over and talk about detailed budget table. So specifically my part, in the part related to the application form, I'm going to cover the following subtopics. So first of all, I will tell you a couple of words about the overall project structure. Then I will try to illustrate how lump sum funding scheme may possibly affect the structure of your project. In other words, what things you should keep in mind when you're structuring your work packages under lump sum funding scheme. Then I will tell you a couple of words about our expectations regarding description of activities and deliverables in your application. Then I will tell a couple of words about what we expect to find in the project in description. Then I'll cover some miscellaneous, very technical aspects in the application, and I'll finish my presentation with some relevant comments on annexes and supporting documents. So let's start with the project structure. Quite often we get a question, so how many work packages do you expect us to have in our project? And of course, we do not have a straightforward answer to that question because a lot of things depend on the nature of your project. But in each and every project, we expect to find at least 3 following work packages. So a work package dedicated to management and coordination activities of the project, a separate work package dedicated to communication and dissemination activities, and at least 1 work package dedicated to project activities. As far as the maximum number of work packages is concerned, it's purely up to you. But our pieces of advice would be the following one. Please make sure that the number of work packages is proportionate to the scale and complexity of the project. And the second piece of advice, make sure that the number of work packages you set is manageable within the time and resources you will allocate to the project. As far as activities and deliverables are concerned, please note that there is not such a requirement for each and every activity to have a separate dedicated deliverable. On the contrary, we suggest combining deliverables where it is possible. So, for example, instead of having a separate deliverable for each and every communication activity, for example, deliverables such as setting up social media channels, publishing articles, organizing dissemination events. So rather than having a number of separate deliverables, you may consider coming up with a consolidated deliverables such as project communication campaign. So one deliverable, and in the deliverable description, you will tell us in greater detail what this deliverable will consist of or include. Now, a couple of words about lump sum funding and structuring work packages. So my colleague Edeminas has presented lump sum funding in greater detail, but I will be stressing just the things which are relevant for the structuring of your project and your work packages. So as you have learned, the essence of the lump sum funding is the completion of the work packages. During project implementation, you will receive the payments only for those work packages which will be completed. Partially completed work packages will be paid only at the end of the project. So having this idea in mind, I have two pieces of advice for you. So first of all, set a reasonable number of activities and deliverables within your work package. So make sure that the number of the activities and the scope of the activities is manageable within the time you specify. And the second piece of advice is consider splitting work packages with a longer duration in line with the reporting period. And this is the idea I'm going to explore in greater detail in my following slides. So what do we mean by splitting work packages with the longer duration? So let's say that you have a project with a duration of 24 months. So rather than having one work package, long work package, which runs from the first month till the very last month of your project, what you can do, you can have two management work packages. One lasting from the first till the 12th month, because 12th month will mark the end of the first reporting period. And then you may have the second management work package, which will run from the 13th till the 24th month. In this case, when you close your first reporting period and when you submit the first periodic report, you will be able to declare one management work package as completed. Please note that even though we recommend considering splitting work packages with a longer duration, no artificial splitting is allowed. So if your work package and the activities within your work package are continuous in their nature and they cannot be meaningfully separated into smaller chunks, please do not divide such work packages into two or more. So what do I mean by that? Let's say that you have work package titled Development of a Technology-Driven Model. So splitting such a work package into two may look questionable. I would like to stress the word may look because a lot of things depends on your justification, but still it may look a little bit artificial because the activity cannot be completed halfway. If the essence is to develop the model, you can't have a model developed in the middle of the process. So please keep that into consideration. Now, one more thing I would like to stress, even though we advise you to split work packages with a longer duration, please note that this is not mandatory. It's not compulsory. It's purely up to you. But we strongly recommend considering this option, particularly when maintaining cash flow during a project is very important. By maintaining cash flow, I mean, if it is important for you to ensure that you will receive the highest possible amount of the second pre-financing and the following ones. And now I'll give you a practical example just to illustrate how theory becomes, how theory works in real life. Right. So let's say that I have a project and my project consists of four work packages. Each work package has a determined lump sum. And in total, I will receive 100,000 euro as my grant. So let's say that the duration of my project is 24 months. So the first reporting period will be over after 12 months, and then I will need to submit my first periodic report. And then the second reporting period will end after 24 months, and I will need to submit my second reporting period. Now, regarding the payments, here I'm giving you a textbook scenario. It means when everything goes by book as it is planned in theory. So I will receive 50% of my grant as the first pre-financing. So the total amount of my grant is 100,000. So I will receive 50,000 as my first pre-financing, then I can receive 30% of the grant as the second pre-financing. This is the maximum possible amount. And so I can receive 30,000 euro, and then I will receive 20% of my grant as the final payment. So that amounts to 20,000 euro. So this is the ideal case. And now let me tell you what may happen in life. So let's say that I have been implementing my project for 12 months. The first reporting period is over. I need to submit periodic report. And in my periodic report, I declare only one work package as completed. So I managed to complete only work package 1, and I have spent 20,000 euro. Other work packages are only partially completed. Maybe some of them I have not yet started implementing some of them. So only one work package is completed. Now what will happen? There is such a rule, which we call 70% rule, which is applicable to all projects which are funded under lump sum funding. So 70% rule says the following thing. If you have spent less than 70% of the received pre-financing, the sum of your second pre-financing will be reduced by the difference between the 70% threshold and the amount used. Now let's go back to example which will illustrate 70% rule in practice. So let's say that I have received 50,000 euros my first pre-financing. So in my first periodic report, I completed only one work package. So I spent 20,000 euros. So I have spent less than 70% of the received pre-financing, because 70% out of 50,000 is 35,000, and I have spent only 20,000. So what will happen? I will not by default get the highest possible amount of the second pre-financing amounting to 30%, but this sum will be reduced by the unspent sum of the first pre-financing. So on this slide, I give you very detailed explanation what happens and how much you will receive as your second pre-financing if you have spent 70% of the first pre-financing amount, but 40%. So as I have said, we will circulate the slides. You will have a possibility to study that in greater detail if you're interested in it. But the conclusion is the following one. The highest possible amount of the second pre-financing in case of my project was 30,000 euro, but I will receive only half, 15,000 euro, because I haven't used up 70% of the first pre-financing. And the final conclusion is the following one. So if ensuring cash flow is crucial for you to successfully implement your project activities and achieve your deliverables, make sure that you think about the structure of your project, and you structure your work packages taking into consideration reporting periods. Now, a couple of words about description of the activities and deliverables. What we have noticed that in quite a few cases, we do not get sufficient description of the activities and deliverables. What do I mean by sufficient? For us, sufficient description of the activities and deliverables is the one based on which we as a granting authority or external assessors can determine the following things. So first of all, we can assess the proposed resource allocation. Based on your description, we can figure out whether the requested amounts are valid and reasonable. Secondly, this is a description based on which we can monitor implementation progress. And it is the description based on which we can verify the successful completion of the project activities and deliverables. In the activities and deliverables description, we strongly recommend including quantitative and qualitative indicators, or quantitative and qualitative parameters, you name them. So what are these? Quantitative and qualitative parameters are the pieces of information which tell us a little bit about the scope of your planned activities. For instance, if you are planning to organize workshops, specify how many workshops, specify how many participants you expect to take part in your workshops. For example, if you are thinking about conducting a survey, so specify as the nature of this activity, whether, for example, it will be in-person focus group meetings, or whether you're going to have a written survey or online survey. For example, if you're planning to organize some events, whether it will be in-person event or whether that will be online event, because that affects, of course, also the expenditure that you have planned. Here, I would like to stress the following thing. We do not expect to get very detailed description from you in which you describe every single step that you are planning to take. But based on description of your activities and deliverables, we should have a very clear picture of the scope of your planned activities, and also they should provide us the context for budget and time allocation. Now, a couple of words about what I have named as quantitative and qualitative parameters. Our piece of advice is this one: strive high, but remain realistic. Why? Because the following thing will happen. If during implementation of your project activities, you meaningfully fail to reach some of the quantitative and qualitative parameters, what may happen? Some of your work packages may be perceived only as partially completed and lump sums may be reduced. So strive high, but remain realistic. Calculate if you have necessary resources, time, budget, and people to implement activities in the capacities that you want them to be implemented. Now, let me give you an example of a good and bad description of the activity. So the bad practice is just when we get one sentence. For example, regular coordination meeting and communication. Such a description raises a lot of questions, such as what does regular mean? Who will participate in the meetings? Will the meetings be held online or in person? Because that's directly linked to the detailed budget table and to the calculations of your planned expenditure. And I have I have improved the description of this activity. I'm not going to read that, but I have enriched this description with such elements. So I specified the frequency of the events. I specified the format of the event. So I tell the assessors that some of these events will be in person, some of them will be online. I tell who will participate in this event. So I'm specifying that at least 2 representatives from each partner will take part in these meetings. I also give some information about planned travels. A piece of advice, again, this is not mandatory, it's not compulsory, but you may consider in the activity description adding a sentence which link this activity to the specific deliverable, something like activity completed after default deliverable is delivered. Now, a couple of words about the description of the deliverables. I think I'm not going to tell you nothing new here, but I would like to stress one thing. Deliverables should be specific, measurable, verifiable, and relevant. As far as I'm concerned, the word verifiable is the most important one. And for your deliverables to be verifiable, what we suggest to do, we suggest including supporting documents in your deliverable description. So in the deliverable description, specify which documents you will provide to the granting authority to prove that you have achieved that deliverable. So let me give you an example. So again, I'm talking about the activity which I have just presented. So coordination meetings, and then I have the deliverable. I named my deliverable coordination meetings and have the following description. Coordination meetings report, one piece, will be drafted after the last meeting, compiling the agendas, detailed meeting minutes, and signed participant attendance list for all coordination meetings held during the project. This report will provide a verifiable record of meeting activities and decisions. And we see such a description to be quite a good example because, first of all, it indicates specific output, it has verifiable content, and we have here also this consolidated results. So rather than producing 12 reports for each and every coordination meeting, I will produce just one piece, but it will include all the necessary information about all the events. And it is a good description of the deliverable because I have also specified supporting documents which I will draft and produce and submit. Now, a couple of words about events, because events is one of the most frequently encountered probably activity. So if your project involves organizing events, be it workshops, webinars, trainings, meetings, consultations, anything that falls under the events, we suggest the following supporting documents to be included. So in the deliverable description, mention that you will submit agenda of the event and the list of participants, because this is the minimum requirements, and anyways, the granting authority will ask you to provide these documents. And in the activity description as such, tell us a little bit more about your planned event. So at least such things as the format, whether it's going to be online or physical events, duration, objective, expected number of participants. So those who have read the call conditions attentively will already know that. But there are 2 activities and 2 deliverables which are mandatory. So they should be included in each and every project. The first activity is mutual learning events organized by the European Competence Center for Social Innovation. So we are the European Competence Center for Social Innovation, and we will organize for you mutual learning events, participation in which is mandatory. And the second mandatory activity and deliverable is project information for the SIM platform. So you will need to upload information about your ongoing project on the platform. Again, not going into detail, you can study that on your own. Just one thing I would like to stress to avoid this mistake. Please note that we will not reimburse travel expenses for participation in mutual learning events separately. Therefore, calculate travel expenditure in advance and include it into your detailed budget table. So this is eligible expenditure, calculate and include it into your budget. Now, a couple of words about project team. So one of the parts of the application is the description of your project team. And I will stress just the most important information here. So in the section dedicated to the project team, there are two columns. One column, name and function, and the other column is role. The mistake frequently encounters mistake under the name and function. So please indicate the function of the team member in the project rather than within the organization. Quite often we get the names of roles which person does on daily basis. So for example, head of the research department or executive director. So the person will not be probably head of the research department as far as the project implementation is concerned, but the person will be the researcher, the person will be the data analyst. So specify the role which the person will take in while implementing the project. And under role include the specific responsibilities that the team member holds in the project. So very briefly tell us what the person will be responsible, what the person will be doing in the project. And here I give you an example of the communication specialist. So I specify what key activities the person will be involved in. To sum up, when we talk about the description of your project team, so you should demonstrate how the team members' expertise directly contributes to the implementation of the project activities. It means it is a piece of advice from us. It is considered to be a good practice, but it's purely up to you to do that or not. What you may do, rather than giving us very detailed description of all the activities and responsibilities, you may try establishing links with the work packages and activities or deliverables. So for example, rather than telling in greater detail what the researcher will be doing, I can do the following thing. The researcher will contribute the work package to flow of research and blueprint design activities planned under work package 3. He will also lead efforts in capacity building, which is activity A43, and conducting workshop for the project stakeholder A57. So if you have a very good description of the activities, then it's pretty clear for the assessor to figure out what the person will be doing when you indicate the work packages and activities he will be involved in. Okay, some miscellaneous technical aspects. Quite simple thing, but we also have some struggles here. In the application, you need to indicate the legal name of the entity. So names of the legal entities should be provided in the original language as registered. Please do not translate them into the English language if the name of your entity, registered name of your entity is not in English. If the original name uses non-Latin script, for example, Greek, please also provide a transliteration into the Latin alphabet. So here I'll give you an example. There is the name of the entity in Greek, and then there is transliteration using Latin script. A couple of words about the amounts. In the detailed budget table, you will have to indicate the total project cost and the grant amounts. In the application form as such, you only need to add to indicate grant amounts. So when you are transferring your data from the detailed budget table to the application, please indicate the grant amount. And about the final part of my presentation, just a couple of words, most important things about annexes and supporting documents. So as you know, there is Annex 5, Annex 6, and registration of certificate in some cases is required. So the most important things regarding Annex 5. Annex 5 is the annex in which you provide information about the projects which you have implemented so far, and the project which prove that you have sufficient operational capacity. My pieces of advice are the following ones. First of all, please do study very attentively criteria laid down in the call conditions for operational capacity. So figure out which projects needs to be implemented for you to have sufficient operational capacity as we see it. Also, please take into account that these conditions and criteria differ from one call to another. So therefore, do not take for granted that what was applicable in one call will be applicable in a DEP, in the Disability Employment Package as well. Also, my piece of advice, please study not only the call conditions, but also the footnotes in annexes. For example, footnotes in the Annex 5 present quite concise and easy to understand the information. Regarding also Annex 5, please do not include the information about all the projects you have implemented so far. In the Annex 5, you need to submit information only about this project, which meet the criteria laid down in the call conditions. And if in your judgment, you are sure that one project definitely meets all the necessary criteria, so it is sufficient only to provide information about one project. And together with the Annex 5, do not forget to submit evidence which proves that at least one of your project indicated in Annex 5 meets all the operational capacity criteria. For example, if you have implemented a project under Horizon, and it is sufficient for us to give the link to official Horizon website where we can verify that you have implemented that project and that the project meets all the necessary criteria. And a couple of words about Annex 6 and registration certificate. Annex 6 needs to be submitted for not only for the coordinator, but also for applicants. So for all expect associated partners. And it needs to be signed by the legal representative, and together with the annexes, you need to submit a document proving that the person who has signed it actually has the right to sign it. Now, regarding the registration certificate, if you have a PIC number and your PIC number is validated, you are not supposed to submit registration certificate. But if you as an entity does not have a PIC number or its status is not validated, is for example declared, then you are supposed to submit a registration certificate. And this rule is applicable now to all participants in the project, the coordinator, co-applicants, and the associated partners. Okay, that's it, what I wanted to say, and Tyler, I give the floor to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm now taking control. Just a second. I want to see if it's working. Okay. In my part of the presentation, I will cover general tips to follow, eligible cost categories, ineligible cost, and other relevant aspects in detailed budget table. So let's check if the slide moves. Okay. So let's start with general tips to follow. So the detailed budget table, in short, DBT, is an Annex 1 of your application and the foundation of your project's financial side. Why is this so important? Because once your grant agreement is signed, the lump sum amounts are fixed. They cannot be increased even if real costs are higher than expected. This slide shows guiding principles how your budget should be constructed. So it should be realistic, justified, and aligned with your activities. So exaggerated, unclear, or inconsistent costs may lead to budget cuts and lower quality assessment score. Moving on. A lot of mistakes come from applicants that they don't read the instructions and cost eligibility condition sheets in detailed budget table. They explain which cost categories are eligible, how to enter units and unit cost, and how lump sum funding works. So before you start filling in detailed budget table, please use on the right side the questions for a quick self-check after reading those sheets. Also, customize the employee types. A lot of mistakes are in general information sheet, but you can choose just 5 personal types that have to exactly mirror the application section 2.3. So if you have similar positions, group them under a clear general role and keep the same title in both the DBT and the application. So this is an example how to group a role. You see a general role of field staff, community engagement. Here represents 3 different team members. The detailed breakdown is provided in the comment sheet of detailed budget table, how much everyone works, the average cost, and who is working. So next one. So here's to complete the detailed budget table, you start simply by entering the beneficiaries, work packages. The file automatically creates separate sheets, as you can see below, of each beneficiary, and then you go by each beneficiary sheet and fill in work package costs. Moving on, to the eligible cost categories, and this call they are free, direct personnel costs, purchase costs, who has 2 subcategories, travel and sustenance, and other goods, works and services. And the last one would be indirect costs, which are calculated automatically. So let's start with direct personnel costs. Under this cost category, only personnel employed under valid employment contracts or equivalent appointed acts. So estimating efforts in person months based on actual involvement if someone is part-time, reduce the months, not the unit cost. And the unit cost is the average gross monthly salary over the last 12 months, including taxes, social contributions of your personnel. And ensure the role and seniority match the tasks in the work packages. Assessors will look for alignment in them. So this slide clarifies what counts under the A1 category, and you can see that under this category doesn't fall natural persons with direct contracts, seconded persons, and so on. So you should check which employees fall under the A1 category. So here's the role of part-time work. As I mentioned before, don't change the unit costs, the monthly salary, or instead reduce the number. And you can see it's given an example of person working for 6 months, just 30% of the time. So the number of units in the budget table would be 1.8. So important tip would be to ensure unit and unit costs are reasonable and evidence-based. Derive unit costs from organization's last 12 months of payroll averages, cross-check against, you can see a link to horizontal dashboard. And where rate exceeds typical levels on averages, please provide an explanation in the detailed budget comment sheet. So here you see an example how to calculate the units of personnel and cost per unit. So units are called also efforts, and 1 unit equals 1 month. So we have an example of 2 managers, how will be calculated if they work 10 days per month and totally 10 months. And you see the formula, and it would be the units amount to 11.16. Now for the average cost, as you can see, both 12 months are summed up, divided by the 2 personnel, and divided by 12 months to receive the average monthly salary. And here you can see the data provided in the detailed budget table, how it should be filled in. So for direct personnel costs, you can use fractions, and if you provide cost for other category of personnel, you have to fill in the comment sheet the breakdown of it. So moving next would be travel and subsistence. So all travel costs are based on European Commission unit cost system. You can see the decision here. Use the European Commission distance calculator to choose the band and calculate trips in the travel cost sheet of detailed budget table. As you can see here in the picture provided, it's marked where is the travel cost sheet. Key tips: use one-way distance for the distance calculator. A lot of mistakes were made where where applicants used round trip. Those costs would be cut then. If the trip isn't covered by European Commission bands, use actual cost and add full breakdown in the travel cost sheet. It has a comment section. When external experts travel, book it under B2 category, not in the travel section. And in this point, you cannot use decimals, so it would be whole numbers. So here's an example how the travel cost calculator looks. And what is important for you would be to clearly indicate in the marked red point of the comment section, the city of departure, the destination, along with the activity number from the application where the travel is planned. So it would be easier for assessors to track it. So, and additionally, if actual costs are used instead of the EC units, Provide a clear breakdown, for example, travel, accommodation, subsistence, and explain the calculation. Next slide. This is a summary table. From this table, you manually transfer the calculated cost to the beneficiary sheets under relevant core packages. So, in the next slide, you can see how it looks in the beneficiary sheet as an example. So let's move on. So next category, other goods and services. And so project procurement must comply with applicable national law, follow the principles of transparency, non-discrimination, proportionality, mutual recognition, and equal treatment. Purchases between beneficiaries are not eligible, so each beneficiary should include their work under their work packages. You may select services by best value for money or the lowest price. And in the right side of the slide, you see an example. If you plan to buy 2 expert services, one priced at 10,000 euros and the other at 20,000 euros, you would record 2 units. And the unit's cost would be 15,000. So that would be clear how to calculate. So now, here's an example how to provide a proper breakdown, because there are a lot of mistakes when the applicants apply. So in the comment sheets, please refer to exact detailed budget row. As an example, it's row 26. Compared to 1, 2, 3 calculations, generic numbers. So it would be easier for us to track what you're explaining. So, and provide clear breakdown of costs provided in the example. So you can see here are 2 experts. Here's provided their hourly rate, hours in the project worked, and for one expert, even travel cost. As I mentioned before, that if external experts are traveling, their cost should be included in here. So next one would be indirect costs. Indirect costs are generally administrative expenses, not directly linked to specific project activities, but is supported for your functioning of organization. So these costs are calculated automatically. You must not add them in the direct cost category, because those costs will be cut. So quite a few mistakes were made of previous applicants. So you can see examples of indirect costs: office rent, furniture, heating, electricity, general IT, printing, and so on. So keep in mind, if you incorporate indirect cost into direct cost, they will be removed. So now ineligible costs. Before adding a line in detailed budget table, pause and check the call conditions. Currently in this call, check section 3.3 and detailed budget table section 2.2 for ineligible items. The most common mistakes was adding financial audits, cost verifications, which are not in line with lump sum projects. Also, subcontracting or granting, like stipends to 4 parties, purchase of equipment, furniture. So like laptops or printers, this will be removed, and your quality criteria could be reduced for this cost. So few other relevant aspects would be, so co-funding. As Beata mentioned, you provide from overview slide where the 20% co-funding requirement is automatically deducted. So it's up to consortium to decide how this contribution is distributed, proportionally between partners, fully covered by one organization, or using another justified logic. And the last slide for me would be, so for final checks, make sure your numbers are realistic, clearly justified, aligned with the project's objectives and timeline. Avoid over or underestimates, and add required note in comment sheets. Don't misclassify costs, for example, as mentioned, indirect as direct cost, or don't include ineligible costs. So thank you for attention. And after this, I would would be a comfort break till 11 for us.
So thank you, Gediminas, Beata, and Aurelia, for your very extensive and detailed presentations. And I think that they're going to be extremely useful for our potential applicants. And we are running a little bit behind. So to keep the schedule, let's meet up at 11 after a short coffee break. Welcome back, everyone. Let's proceed with our event. After this short break, we will have 2 more presentations. The first focusing on the frequently asked questions, and the second one, how to find a partner for this projects if you do not have one. So, Rima, the floor is yours.
Thank you for introduction. Just one moment to take a control. Okay, hello all. My name is Rima. I'm the project coordinator at European Competence Center for Social Innovation. And as you may know, there is a dedicated section on the COL website of frequently asked questions, and you can refer to this section for many more questions and answers published there. But today, in this session, my aim is to give you an overview of some of the most frequently asked ones. And they are grouped into 4 topics. First is aim of the call, then eligibility, eligible participants, consortium composition, operational capacity, and project budget. So the format of presentation is very easy to follow. In most of the cases, there will be a question in one slide and a corresponding answer in another slide. So let's begin with the aim of the call and the questions included into this topic. So first question posed was, the aim of the call is to support transnational projects that seek to transfer or scale up social innovations referenced in the Disability Employment Package. Applicants are expected to base their proposals on one or more of the specific practices presented in the package. And where can we find information about the Disability Employment Package referenced in the call? So the corresponding answer is that the Disability Employment Package is available on the official website of the European Commission. You can simply navigate there by entering the keywords Disability Employment Package. The direct link will also be available in the materials that will be distributed after the event. So the package presents a collection of social innovations and practices aimed at improving labor market outcomes for persons with disabilities. And as mentioned, applicants are expected to base their proposals on one or more of these practices when designing their projects. So the outputs of the projects resulting from the implemented activities should make innovative practices accessible, adaptable, and replicable for other stakeholders who are able to implement similar practices, such as public authorities, public employment service providers, employers, and other relevant organizations. So if you will refer to the call conditions, you will find listed documented practices such as procedures, manuals, guidelines, or any other documented practices. Importantly, these outputs that are listed in call conditions must not merely replicate the package guidelines, but instead they should either be adapted to specific sectors or groups or beneficiaries, or include practical instructions on implementing the measures or processes developed by the project. So the project beneficiary also, who is a public authority responsible for enacting policies relevant to the objectives of the call, should review them with a view for further implementation. So this will be the answer to the first question. And the following is, should the original implementers of the practices referenced in the Disability Employment Package examples be included in the consortium? And we would like to draw your attention that examples included in the package provide information about the entities that originally implemented the good practices. However, there is no requirement to include these entities in consortium when applying for this call. So following question, how is disability defined? The definition of disability is provided in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and it states that persons with disabilities include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment, which, in interaction with various barriers, hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. So this would be the main definition within the scope of the call. And the following question is, are chronic diseases considered a disability under this call? And to answer, I would like to start with the information that one of the 6 topics addressed by the Disability Employment Package is retaining persons with disabilities in employment, preventing disabilities associated with chronic diseases. And the package document presenting information on the area of focus is the Manual for Managing Chronic Diseases and Preventing the Risk of Acquiring Disabilities, which states that chronic illness is closely related to the risk of disability. And the manual provides guidelines for specific diagnosis, and the chronic diseases covered in the manual includes cancer, cardiovascular diseases, musculoskeletal disorders, long COVID, and work-related psychosocial risks. So applicants aiming to scale practices that are referenced in this manual are within the scope of this call. The applications that are aiming to scale such initiatives are within the scope of the call. Following, we are transitioning to the eligibility, eligible participants, and consortium composition topic, and the questions within this topic. So first question is, who are eligible participants? Which countries are eligible to participate? So I know some of the slides will have a lot of text, but please follow me. So to be eligible, the applicant acting as the coordinator, applicant, and associated partner must, so first, be legal entities, be established in one of the legal countries, that is EU member states, or non-EU countries, and European Economic Area countries, and those associated to the ESF, that is Iceland, Moldova, Montenegro, Norway, and Serbia, as well as countries with which an association agreement is under negotiation. And those countries are Ukraine, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Kosovo, provided the association agreement enters into force before the signature of the grant agreement. And there are specific conditions listed in the call conditions for the latter group of the countries. And that is, the association agreement must enter into force within 1 month from either the date on which the final draft of the grant agreement is agreed between the granting authority and the applicant, that is coordinator, or the date on which the granting authority, at its discretion, declares the draft final in cases where harmonization is excessively prolonged. So, failure to conclude the association agreement within this 1 month period will render the application of the applicant ineligible for funding and will lead to rejection. So this is something to note for the group of countries. Following, the question is, what are consortium composition requirements? So only consortium can apply, and consortium must include an applicant, that is the coordinator, and at least 2 co-applicants. So the consortium must include at least 1 public authority as co-applicant or associated partner, which should be established in the same country as the applicant or one of the co-applicants, and responsible for implementing the policies relevant to the objectives of the call, especially in the areas of employment and disability. And the members of the consortium shall present at least 2 different eligible countries. What is also important in constructing and forming consortiums is that an associated partner can participate in a project but may not declare eligible costs, and also will not be counted towards the required minimum number of consortium members. So this is something important to know while preparing the application. Next questions. Can an entity be a lead applicant or coordinator only in one project? And related question is, can the same entity be a partner co-applicant in another project? So the answers to those questions are, an entity may participate as a coordinator only in one consortium project. And an entity may participate as co-applicant or associated partner in more than one application. So restrictions are for a coordinator role implied. Now, so we reached operational capacity section and the questions within this topic. What are they? First, only the operational capacity of the coordinator will be assessed under this call. Public bodies are exempt from the operational capacity check. If needed, the granting authority may request additional information to verify the state of the public body. So the question was, how do you define public bodies? And I would like to draw your attention that the definition of a public body can be found in the glossary of the call conditions. And public body is any legal entity which is established as a public body by national law. And if you will refer to the call conditions, there will be some requirements listed that is evidence, but not a sufficient evidence to define an entity as a public body. So I would like to refer you to this section to simply review the requirements. Another question. To assess the operational capacity of the coordinator, Annex 5, list of previous projects must be submitted. And question, could you elaborate on the requirements for suitable projects, specifically which projects should be presented to substantiate operational capacity? So my colleague Beata already addressed some related areas regarding this annex, but the coordinator must have sufficient experience in project management and coordination, and it is compulsory to meet specific criteria in points A or B. And what are they? So point A applies for situations where the operational capacity is substantiated by the experience of the coordinator as the legal entity. And point B is when experience of a lead project manager is used. So point B will be discussed in the following slide. But first, let's overview the point A requirements. So the coordinator as a legal entity has managed at least one consortium project funded by EU or national public funds, which was managed by the coordinator, involved beneficiaries, an applicant, that is coordinator and co-applicant from no fewer than 2 different countries, lasted at least 12 months, had a total budget of more than 200,000 euros, and was implemented and finished within the last 5 years. Dates indicated 1st November 2020 to 29th October 2025. Important message here that only projects meeting all the 5 requirements above will be taken into consideration for the assessment of operational capacity of the coordinator. So now I'm moving to the point B. Some of the information will overlap, but I would like to introduce it. In case operational capacity is substantiated by the experience of the lead project manager, the following requirements must be met. So the lead project manager, directly involved in the management of the project submitted under the call, has managed at least one consortium project that was funded by EU or national public funds, and which was managed by the lead project manager, involved beneficiaries, that is an applicant, coordinator, and co-applicant from no fewer than 2 different countries, lasted at least 12 months, and had a total budget of more than 200,000 euros, and also was implemented and finished within the last 5 years, the same indicated days. And again, only projects that meet all 5 of the above requirements will be considered for the assessment of the lead project manager's operational capacity. Additionally, the lead project manager is expected to have a very good command of English, that is C1 level or higher. And I will continue on this in the following slide. And The operational capacity of the coordinator to manage the project shall be confirmed by the submission of the following supporting documents that colleague Bata also overviewed a little bit. But first, a list of projects managed by the coordinator or the lead project manager within the last 5 years. And you should see an Annex 5 of the call conditions for a template to justify those 2 points that I've mentioned, A or B. So, evidence proving that at least one project from those indicated in Annex 5 meets all 5 operational capacity criteria. And the documentation must clearly demonstrate that the project indicated. So point 1 was coordinated, managed by the lead applicant, that is coordinator, or the lead project manager. Point 2 involved partners, that's beneficiaries, a lead applicant or coordinator, and co-applicants from no fewer than 2 different countries, lasted at least 12 months, and had a total budget of more than 200,000 euros. Was implemented and finished within the last 5 years. Dates indicated are 1st November 2020, 29th October 2025, but please note that projects that started before this date, 1st of November 2020, are still eligible provided they were implemented and finished within this time frame. And now point 3, a declaration by the coordinator certifying the professional competencies, appropriate qualifications, and a very good command of English, C1 level or higher of the coordinator's project team to carry out the required tasks. And this document is Annex 8 that must be submitted. Okay, and the final topic, which is project budget, and a few questions within this topic. So, questions are, could you clarify how the 20% co-financing is determined, and can co-financing of at least 20% be contributed in different ways? Is it possible for only one beneficiary to contribute to the project, or can the co-financing be redistributed between all beneficiaries? So, the answer would start with the message that co-financing is required, and the grant may not exceed 80% of the project's total eligible costs. Thus, co-financing of at least 20% must come from other sources than the EU budget. It is important to know that funds from other EU programs cannot be used as a source of co-financing. So the detailed budget table, that is Annex 1, that my colleagues already presented, establishes the maximum grant amount by automatically calculating this 80% of the total project costs. So the remaining 20% of project costs must be co-financed by the applicant and co-applicants. It is important to know that project costs, including this co-financing part, should relate to eligible costs and contributions, and more information on eligible and ineligible costs can be found in call conditions section 3.3. Additionally, by signing the Declaration of Honor for Beneficiaries, which is Annex 6 to the call conditions, applicants commit to make this co-financing contribution of no less than 20% during the implementation of the project. And I would like to draw your attention that applicants may agree to redistribute co-financing, but this must be specified in the consortium agreement. Following question. Section 2.2, activities of the call conditions, sets out the mandatory activity of participation in mutual learning events organized by the European Competence Center for Social Innovation. So during the implementation of projects, it is planned to organize 2 to 4 mutual learning events, and maximum of those events will take place, 2 of those will take place on-site, provisionally in Vilnius and Brussels, and the rest online. So the question was, could you please provide further guidance on how to plan this activity? And in the following slide, I would like to provide some useful tips. So participation in mutual learning events is mandatory and must be included in planning of your project, and 2 participants per project are expected to attend each face-to-face event. Any member of the consortium might represent their project at these events. So this might be coordinators, employees, or any of beneficiaries or employees. So the related costs can be included under project management, or depending on the structure of your proposal, in other relevant work packages, it could be allocated. And at this stage, no fixed dates have been set for the events. It will be, and it is usually indicated at a later stage. So I hope these recommendations were helpful. And here I would like to conclude on this session and remind you that there is many more questions and answers posted in the COLS website. And I would like to also give floor to my colleague, Aurelia, to continue with the session.
Okay, I'm taking control. Hi again. So okay, so my next presentation is quite short. It's about the second virtual matchmaking for this call, designed to help efficiently identify suitable partners and arrange target meetings for you. So now the matchmaking will be 5 days long, and it starts from 22nd till 26th of September. Registration has been open since 8th of September, so all practical details and sign-up link are available on the event page. Please register to the event, create a clear profile, who you are and what you are seeking, browse attendee profiles, send and accept meeting requests and messages, and join your scheduled meetings. Additionally, you can browse the attendee list from the first matchmaking. There's no contact information there, but it's useful for identifying organizations you may wish to approach. So also registered participants can continue messaging on B2Match platform until the call deadline. So keep discussions moving and you can find partners for your projects there. So if you have not done so already, please register today because the matchmaking starts on Monday, 22nd of September, and it will be till 26th, and you're able to register until the last day. So refine your profile with clear keywords and arrange meetings. So thank you for your attention, and I'm giving the floor to Ina.
Thank you, Aurelia. So this presentation concludes our info session today. I'd like to remind you that this info session was recorded. So we're gonna publish the recording of this info session on our webpage, socialinnovationplus.eu. And also we will redistribute this recording via email after this event. I want to repeat that if you are interested in a more detailed information about this call, activities, deliverables, background of the call, eligible activities, you can also find a recording of the first info session on our web page. If you have any additional questions, please send us to socialinnovationplus.eu. That's a dedicated email box for this call, and we will reply as soon as possible. If you have any technical questions regarding the application, you can send them to socialinnovationplus.eu, and we also will reply as soon as possible. So that's it from us. I'd like to thank you all for connecting, and I also want to thank my team for preparing and giving presentations today. Have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.